Hi, everyone. So moving further, we will be having our session hosted by Jaipur chapter on container security. And before we commence the session, I would like to thank our founding sponsor, Innovation Roots, which is a leading consulting and training service provider helping organizations to achieve business agility and beyond. It is one of the leaders and pioneers of niche publishing services and is well known for content collaboration with global thought leaders, authors, and creators. And we are also very thankful to Jile for sponsoring us. Jile is a product offering from Tata Consultancy Services Limited and is a purely cloud-based enterprise agile planning tool along with DevOps capabilities. Enterprises can use Jile to adopt agile practices or scale across multiple Scrum and Kanban teams using enterprise scaling frameworks such as SAFe, Disciplined Agile, Less and More. You can try out Jile for free for up to 20 users for 1 year by signing up at jile.io. Or you can also reach out to us for any inquiries or exclusive product demo. I request everyone to check out the Agile page on Agile Network India website for more information. Thank you. And hi, Anurag. Welcome to the session. And the stage is yours now. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
We have Vikram as well, right? Hi,
yeah.
Vikram.
Hey, Vikram.
Hey, hello, good morning.
Thank you so much for facilitating the session. So over to you guys now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, let me do some housekeeping first. Just sharing the screen. Tell me when it is visible.
Yep, it's good.
Yeah. So this is me. Like Vikram, do you want to tell? Means I'm new here, right? So if you have some thoughts about me, please go ahead.
So, hello everyone, and warm welcome in this session. We have Anurag Chaudhary with us today, and he is one of the very technical enthusiasts and a very wonderful senior developer. He carries out lots of knowledge around the development technologies and the DevOps. And today in the session of the container security, I'm sure he will give us a more detailed insight around it. And Anurag, if you would like to introduce a bit more about you.
Yeah. Okay. So since I'm like kind of very new here, I'll start with myself, what I'm technically. So I'm a developer by heart. I do DevOps. I was doing it more often previously. I'm kind of tech lead to a bunch of people, and I want to be a technical architect moving forward, maybe in some time. So I'm trying it like every day. So yeah, so this is like what about me in forms of what I do as my daily job and what I love to do to work. I love technology. I love watching movies. I love nature. And making friends is like kind of my hobby. One thing is like which is the third line which I mentioned kind of everywhere. It is there on my GitHub as well, and that is like I hate traffic on road, but I don't hate traffic on the network because that is my bread and butter. You see, network goes on, but when it's on road, it kills time. So yeah, like everybody is so silent, so I'll just make use of it. So in case if you have some questions, I'll poke you in somewhere in the middle of the presentation, and please ask a few questions. I'll try answering them, and I'll try my level best that I complete this whole talk in the given time. I'm a bit of talkative person, but since I'm married, those things are going down day by day. So that my property of mine is like kind of diminishing day by day. See. Okay, so let's start with today's talk, which is about container security. So when you talk about today's world, and we are delivering on a very higher pace, people are like busy day and night. They are working around the clock. They are working around the globe. And when people are actually pitching towards monthly deliveries, overnight deliveries, release candidates, nightly builds, and so many things, then containers are making our life a bit easier when it comes to the whole development life cycle, means from the chair of the developer, and when it goes right to the production, containers are actually making it happen most of the times nowadays. There's a big trend. If you go to like if you have been into the technology trend, a recent survey said that container and containerization of applications, microservices, Kubernetes, Docker, LXC, Mesos, they are kind of the most looked out skills nowadays after Java. So so it has come to second, and maybe like it is approaching fast, so it may surpass what we have like as in programming languages, Java, and the most sought skill for. So when we talk about anything on the network, anything on the production, we talk about its security as well. Before I like kind of start with this session, I would like to have a few moments like what are the major takeaways from this session. It would be a bit of technical, it would be a bit of eye-opener in some terms of like how the technology is being used, how it is being reused, and how come it is making an impact on your daily life when we are containerizing the application, when we are on a developer's chair. So the prerequisites and standardization of development teams, and that to deliverables at the time when the sprint is going on, and when you are into a PI, that is being driven by your DevOps cycle, your pipeline, your nature of the application. If it is a microservice, then surely it is containerized, kind of like maximum 70% times I had seen things are containerized when they are like microservice. There are a few exceptions, but let's don't talk about this now. One thing, by the end of this session, I would like to add one thing as in when I go through this session, that why don't we work as like flattening our team, like from moving from DevOps and DevSecOps to NoOps. Like NoOps means no operations. So theoretically, the concept is to remove all the major platform and infra build and management part. Also, like NoOps is intended to reduce the gap between what developers are doing and what infrastructure engineers are doing. So if we talk about today's world, we are kind of writing infrastructure as code, and hence we are writing immutable infrastructure on the cloud. So if we apply NoOps in our team, that will create a rock solid team end to end of a few end to end developers. So the only thing which we need to take care about NoOps is like we need to have some permissions around like what developers are doing and what they can do and what the production guy cannot do, and what the operations guy may not do. So just the permissions part, add a bit of DevOps to your developer, and you shall be good to go with the overall development. Apart from this, like in this session, as we move forward, when we talk about the tools, what tools we are going to use for development, what tools we are going to use for our container image management, then we would be like talking about a bit about the spend on the infrastructure. So your spend may vary when we talk about security, since security is a big aspect, but we cannot move away from security. Then there would be like a few how-tos, and that is intended to majorly developers in your team, and we'll see how to do it and what to use, along with a few maybe like beginner to intermediate strategies. So yeah, those are the key takeaways. So like moving next is people ask like what is the major concern and why do we want to secure our containers. So when people ask me why, I answer why not. And that is because since your systems can be hacked, containers are no exceptions. So when we say containers are no exceptions, that means container itself is a system. And when we go to the core of container, we'll find that we are actually running a pseudo system in a system. So hence we should secure it, because people may run down to your system, your infrastructure, may play with your runtime, and if we are not secure enough, then and if we did not took like some steps, we are not proactive, they may like make our system go for a toss easily. So in that cases, what a container should and what a container should not be: a container should run isolated, it must be immutable. And when I say immutable means it means we cannot the container shouldn't change itself, and it shouldn't leverage somebody to change itself, even if it is data. So say if we are mounting something to container, that's absolutely fine, but otherwise what a container has has got with itself, it shouldn't be it should be immutable, it shouldn't be mutable. And then I would suggest that it should be lightweight. So lightweight means when we pull this image down to our system, our node where we want to run it, it should be lightweight. And then finally it should be hardened enough. Hardened means we create our own security around the image which is being provided by the one who has actually created the image. So let's say an example that you want to use Ubuntu, but when we are going to use the raw Ubuntu image, that might be exposing quite a few things around. So on top of this, add your layers, like you want to expose whatsoever things, just add those things. And also, like when I say hardening means, that means the hardening should go in form of what resources it may use and what resources it cannot use. So we'll talk about hardening at the runtime in a few moments. And what a container must not. So a container must not accumulate system resources, a container must not work as a mole, and a container must not work as a black hole or a miracle. So black hole and miracle are two words which have been used vastly previously when we do a system analysis and design, and which is black hole means we are giving input and we are not getting any output, that is the black hole. And when we say miracle, then that is we are not giving an input to the system and we are getting much of the output. So that is a miracle. Okay, so this was kind of what should happen and what the container should look like, and like what it should not do. So before like I proceed next, I would like to speak about a few jargon which we see in our daily life. So there was an instance back like a few years ago. I don't remember the dates, but it was kind of after 2016. That this runc library was, so runc is a container runtime which is low level. It is being used widely, and by the time 2018 came, it was used kind of by every runtime, high level runtime interface library. So in 2019, the first vulnerability of the runtime was found. It was known as CVE 2019-5736. So what is CVE? When we talk about containers and their vulnerabilities, we talk it in the terms of the jargon, which is CVE, which is common vulnerabilities and exposures. So whenever you have a team set up with you, which is doing development on daily basis, they should scan their image for any CVE. And that scan could be a static scan, and it will give you some output in CVEs. It may or may not give you. So if you have some CVEs, surely create a Jira ticket right away for that, or maybe whatever, if you are using Azure DevOps, create a ticket, create an issue right away, and check those vulnerabilities on the National Vulnerability Database, which is available widely, and you may search it, search anything on this National Vulnerability Database. If that vulnerability is not of your concern, please move ahead. If not, then please see what else you can do around this. So that is one key takeaway for you. So the moral of the story is, whenever you are doing a development using container, if you found a CV, so the first step is scan it. If you have some vulnerability, please go ahead and check how lethal it is. It may or may not be lethal for you, but checking it would be a good way for moving ahead. And this whole thing is being organized by MITRE, which is a non-profit organization. So if you go to MITRE, if you search Google for MITRE, then you'll find that everything is being there. So you may find the links going wherever. For a quick reference, so that is the link down below, which directly points to the first container CVE which was found. Okay, so now let's talk about the container runtime, which is there to facilitate you, which is there to scare you. Okay, so first thing, like how does a Docker engine work? So I'm taking an example of container D as a runtime which sits on top of runc. And this image is an image courtesy from Computing for Geeks. So what happens, like our CLI talks to Docker engine, and Docker engine then talks to container D, which talks to runc. Now, what exactly is runc? So runc is a low-level runtime, which I just spoken about a few minutes back. But runc is being widely used. It's being used in container D. It's being used with CRI-O, which is CRI-O, and Docker is no exception. So Docker said we are excited to introduce Docker Engine 1.11, our first release built on runc and containerd. With this release, Docker is the first to ship the runtime based on OCI technology, demonstrating the progress the team has made since donating our industry standards and all those stuff. So now when you talk about runc configures your C groups and your namespaces as per the commands which we give it on the Docker Engine CLI, on the Docker CLI. So Docker CLI talks to Docker Engine, then that talks to whatever we have in place for the mediator, which is the broker, and then this boils down to runc finally, and runc then talks to two things, which are namespaces and C groups. So we'll talk about C groups in a moment, but this is how like the container runtime looks like vaguely. And why this should be learned? Because it is a bit more complicated when we do when we go ahead and we find our vulnerabilities around this. So we need to we must see at how the things are working, so that the complications of day-to-day deliverables gets uncomplicated. So yeah, this is like we are in mid somewhere of the presentation. So should you have any questions, please drop in with in the chat box. And if you want to ask me something till now, I shall be entertaining a couple of questions, but not more than that, because I need to catch up it within the time. So anybody?
Anurag, we can go ahead with the session, and we can take all the queries during the end of the session.
Okay, cool. Fine. So I'll quickly move ahead in that case. Yeah, so since I'm a big fan of movies, so this is one favorite line of mine when I talk about Linux and containers, which is, unfortunately, no one can be told what the matrix is. You will have to see it for yourself. And it has been there since 1999, and kind of the containers are built on the same thing. You may or may not believe this, but as soon as we move ahead, there would be a few eye openers. So I'll start with an eye opener, which is when you search. So there was a DockerCon back in 2015, 2016 somewhere. It's there on YouTube. A few excerpts in this slider from that DockerCon. So that guy who was working on the container part, he found that if he went to search for containers in LXC. LXC is Linux containers, and he found that containers are nowhere. Now, from that talk, there are like a few takeaways, and those things are that whatever we are running today, even if we are running a Linux machine today, that itself is a container. And when we talk about the containers which we are running today, that itself is a container inside a container. Those containers are being manifested and then fogged and then reused, limited, controlled by something known as control groups. And then on top of this, there are namespaces as well. So the figure on the left, this shows like how those containers talk to the C groups. C groups are control groups. So control groups are core of means Linux. So if you search for C groups on Google, you'll find that it is coming from Red Hat somewhere. So the first documentation is like coming from Red Hat. So, and then what we are doing is like we are booting our containers in namespaces. So what exactly is happening here in a very quick overview is like we have whenever we are booting our containers, we are booting our containers in namespaces, and those namespaces would be like IPC namespaces, mount namespaces, network namespaces, PID, user, and UTS. So what those namespaces are doing, that they are actually isolating a chunk of the containers from others. So this is what they are doing. And hence those containers which are in the same namespace can discover each other in a better way. So the inter-process communication would be better. They can they are sharing the same DNS, kind of same DNS, or if not the same DNS, then a part of the same DNS, at least a subdomain of the same DNS. And then if we talk about C groups, so C groups are the control groups which are used to limit access and which are used to limit the access to the system resources, basically. C groups are basically, control groups are basically known as C groups, and they are hierarchical. So they follow a standard directory structure. When we say Linux, Linux is all about directories. So whenever we speak about C groups, we speak about a few sudo fs directories. So sudo fs is another Linux kernel thing, which we can think about as kind of a directory structure, which is being used widely to talk with the processes, controlling the processes. So this is what a C group is. So C groups are hierarchical policies. So the policy which sits on top is being inherited somewhat by its children as well. And C groups are formed using multiple nodes. So since it's hierarchical, there are multiple nodes, and a node is basically a collection of properties of a process. So what we can do with C groups, what sort of limitations do you want to impose using C groups, which is memory. Then another one is TLB. TLB is translation locus head buffer. So when we do paging, then TLB comes in picture, and then CPU, then bulk IO, network, and then devices as in like whatever we are mounting on the system. So this is what we are doing using C groups. So this is how your container looks like in depth. Like whenever you are running, it is what we are doing is like we are like isolating our process. So that is why there is the command called docker ps, and that means it is actually forking a process for you whenever you are spinning up an image to a container. And that is why the command ps, if you go on Linux, if you do a ps, then that is a native Linux command which shows you the processes running. And when we do a docker ps, we'll find all the processes which are being run, which are there being controlled by the Docker engine. So it will give you its own container IDs. But using that container ID, if you go run docker top and then container ID, you'll find the process ID of that. And since this is happening in a namespace which is isolated, a C group which is isolated, we think that it is Docker is nothing but a kind of lightweight VM, but it is not. Basically what it is a process which is isolated rather than it is a VM which is isolated. And when we say this, so why this whole slide is here, when we say this, that it is a process running inside your system, that means your system is vulnerable if your container is vulnerable. And that is why the security is primary concern. So whole takeaway from this slide is, if your container is vulnerable, your other nodes could also be vulnerable. So it can also be attacked. Fine. So this was like the whys and what's. Let's talk about hows. When we talk like how to do it, then we would talk about two things majorly. One is static scan, and then we'll talk a bit about system hardening. So first, let's start from static scan. So static scan actually facilitates us by scanning the image which we are using for our development. So first things first, maybe it is not written here, but first things first, whenever we are developing things, so it is now the duty of the one who is actually facilitating the development, be it the team lead, be it the tech lead, scrum master, whomsoever. It's his duty that whatsoever is going on production should be there on the developer's machine. The reason being, if it is not going to happen, there are two things which are going to happen. First is, it runs on my machine, problem once again, even if we are using containers. Secondly, if it is a different container, or I must say, if it is a different image which we are using as a base image, or we are using that image, then on developer's chair it is working fine, it may work fine, but when it is going ultimately on the production, and when the scan is happening, it may speak up about some vulnerabilities, and when we see some vulnerabilities, we may stop our production. And even if the development is done, our production release, or maybe staging release, may be a stop show at that point of time. So we don't want a hard stop, even if we have done all those things we have done. And that is why, going back to the previous slide, a no-ops team would help you much better when the developer knows that whatever is going to get there in the production. So that is why the key takeaway is, make your team a bit more wide, give developers a bit more permissions, so that they can actually work on these things, so that your production does not stop any point of time. Now, quickly, like how the scan happens. So in a daily work environment, how exactly it happens is like, we have a repository, then we do push some code in this repository, this goes to the CI/CD pipeline, your image is now ready, and then we push this to container registry. Now change this a bit, introduce a new item in there, which is scan it. You can scan your images easily. There are tools available. Those tools may be free, they may not be free. So the good news for those who are using AWS, that ECR comes with a free push, scan on push kind of facility. So whenever you push your image, it scans for vulnerabilities and it shows all of them. So it is there. Then there are a few tools which are there, which you can use, which are third-party tools like Anchor, Qualys, and Docker Trusted Registry, Small Form DTR. Those who are using Azure, Azure also has an offering which is Azure Defender, and it is using Qualys, and it has a few limitations. It usually charge you it, and funny this side, even it is coming from Microsoft, they don't support Windows images to scan. So yeah, well, whatever it is, scanning in the image whenever you are pushing your images to your repository, your container repository, registry, whatever you call this, should be a mandate. We don't want a stop show when we are actually done with everything, and we are like kind of in middle of a rollout. Next is system hardening. So I'll just start with system hardening in a Ziffy with going back to the 3 supported container runtimes majorly, which are there on the Kubernetes official documentation. They say that we support Containerd, we support CRI-O, and we support Dockerd. All of them use runc. Now, we spoke about runc, we spoke about processes, we spoke about like how the execution happens. So one thing, one thriller to take away is that whenever we boot a pod, a container, it runs with the UID 0. And when we say it runs with the UID 0, that means it is kind of root to your system resources. So it can access kind of everything and in every measure. So one thing which is being facilitated widely by all of those container orchestration environments is like you can change the user, you may change the group, and you may change the FS group. FS stands for file system. So there's a small snippet of specifications which you can write in your pod definition or pod template. If you are writing deployments, then this thing may go into the deployment as well. So this is the pod specification, and decorate your pod specification with those 2 things and run as user, and then give them user IDs and group IDs which you have created. And if you haven't created them, then you can give them any arbitrary number that works somewhat. And the next time when you run using those security contexts, your process shall not process shall not be running as a privileged process. So hence, like, there are some constraints which is being used by Docker nowadays. They are working on that privileged flag of them, but that is the takeaway, that your DevOps, your SecOps teams should know this. Then before I move on to the kind of, it is last one, yeah, it is the last slide, which is hardening the system on run times. Is what you can do is you can limit the resources, and to limit the resources you may write those things while booting a container. So the container specifications which we just have seen, on top of this containers, we wrote some limitations for the users, groups, and FS. And in the containers itself, you can write down that, okay, resources and then the limits to those resources. So this particular limit of the resources speaks like the maximum memory which can be allocated is 200 megabytes MBs, and the request. So if a container has to request some memory from the operating system, it it is not going beyond 100 mega MBs. And if you are using one CPU and you want a container to eat just the half of this, maximum, you can write like limit it to one CPU, and then use half of it, 0.5 of this. When we say CPU, that means a CPU core, one CPU core. So if you have like 8 cores, so this configuration will let it use just one core of whatever you have. And then a quick reference is like, if you want to see what exactly is happening, you with your pod, you can like run this command anytime. So yeah, those were the quick takeaways. Apart from this, there's something called RBAC, but that would be like the whole new Kubernetes session happening. So I want to skip this. Yeah, so I'm kind of done in time. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Anurag, for the wonderful session. And we do have a few of the nice questions from the audience.
Okay.
And one of the question is from Manoj, is which network communication pathways are active but are not being used in the production? So,
Can you elaborate the question? Like, I could not get it.
so I believe the question is specifically to identify how to identify which network communication pathways are active in the production, which are not. So when we have multiple network protocols ready in our infrastructure, so what are being generally used in the production and what are not in the active state? How to identify those in the container security?
Okay, so in those cases, the core commands like netstat and a few tools around this would work for you. When we say about system hardening, what we do here is like we harden our load balancers. And when we talk about load balancers, we talk about like creating a load balancer on top of whatsoever we are running. If you're running, even if you're like running a bare metal Kubernetes cluster or maybe a Docker Swarm cluster, then what you can do is like you can just open those ports which are necessary. Just don't open everything. And this is the first thing you do whenever you create a load balancer, be it like on Azure, be it like on AWS. And even if like you are writing your own ingress, so your own ingress controller has got the specification where you can write HTTP and HTTPS. And one good or bad thing I don't know about ingress is like the ingress comes with the facility by default, like you can just open HTTP and HTTPS. If you need some TCP/IP ports to open and to access your network, then what you can do is like there's a whole big documentation which you can go through. So if you need that, please ping me. I'll just find it for you, and I'll just post it for you. So when it comes to containerization, what we do is like we just open those ports which are being used. We don't open the whole world.
All the ports, all the ports. Right?
Yeah, correct.
I believe Manoj must have got his answer. And another question, interesting question, which I could see in the question answer section is, which vulnerable running containers or the deployment should be prioritized first for the remediation? So I think its question is around, say, for example, few of the containers are vulnerable. So which of the very first container should be the priority for resolving the issue?
Okay. So there's means I might go very rude, but the thing is there's no correct answer to this question which suits in. And there's the reason around this is those container vulnerabilities are actually posted as bugs and they are not much categorized. So if you have like whole lot of CVEs in your a static scan. If you find them in your static scan, what you can do is, like, the best thing you can do is maybe you may build your own database, or maybe you can use a third-party tool. So the tools like Qualys, the tools like Anchor, ANCHORE, they have a prioritization criteria of kind of that they'll let you know that, okay, this is a major bug, a major CVE which you should go through, and which you should actually take care of on priority. So it will help you prioritizing this. But as I say, that if you are going CVEs by number, one by one, then that thing you need to, like, go hit the database, find the vulnerability, and then see it by yourself. Or second is, like, use a third-party tools. So the Amazon's tool is what it is doing, like, it is giving you all the CVEs. And when you use Anchor or maybe Snake, you will find some other things. So there's another tool called Sync or Snake, I guess. It starts from S. It has got good capabilities where you can actually, if you know, like, a base image has got some vulnerabilities, so you can actually bypass that base image. So it has got a whole flag written like bypass base image. So you may use that as well. So yeah, that answers, I guess. There's no answer to this question. I'm sorry about this, or maybe if it is there, I am not aware, but yeah, this is what I know. This is what I know from my experiences, right?
This is wonderfully elaborated, of course. And as time doesn't permits us to take many more questions, but I would like to take one last question, which is very straightforward. The individual asked that which network communication pathways are active. Sorry. Okay, this is a question. Are there any precautions that one should take with container orchestration platforms such as Kubernetes? So when you talk about the Kubernetes,
when you talk about Kubernetes, the best we can do is, like, we can actually limit the resources. So the last couple of slides which we talked about is, like, we are actually limiting the resources. We are not leveraging the container to use the system resources out of, like, anything. So we limited them. We created our own groups, we created our own FS groups, we created our own user groups. So create your user group on the node which you have. Create your own user group on that node, and then assign your deployments to that. So whenever you are writing the deployment, in the deployment, there's there's this section which comes in when you write your container specification. The downside to this is, like, if you harden your image harden your system too very much, then what you need to do is, you may see a very great spikes at times. Like, if you, like, one container which is actually serving the requests to a client IP, if that is happening, so what would go is, like, and you have limited that to 20% of CPU usage. So what is going to happen this, then you will see that the pods are going up and down very frequently. So do take care of this. So your limitations should be optimized somewhat, and optimization may come from the regression and the load testing only.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think we are already on time, and the topic is so vast that we can talk a number of hours on this container security and DevOps part. But since we have to be time boxed, and I would like to say thanks, Anurag, for this wonderful session. Yeah. And of course, the audience, he is approachable for any of your furthermore queries around DevOps or the container security. You can reach out to him on the LinkedIn. I think, Shreya, over to you now.
Yes, thank you so much, Vikram, and thank you so much, Anurag, for a wonderful session.
Yeah, I'm for those who are bored out of my session, I'm, like, literally sorry, but I had no options.
Probably they can ping you on LinkedIn, Anurag. Is that okay for more questions if they have?
Yeah, please do that.
Yes, that will be great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, most welcome.